Okay, so we're up to over here in the Gemara in Moed Katan. We're up to on page 17a, Yud Zayin Omid Aleph. And we're still talking a little bit, the first part today, we're talking a little bit about the laws of excommunication and the various application, the various situations, as we've been discussing from before. So the Gemara says like this, we're up to Amar Rav Huna. Amar Rav Huna. Says Rav Huna that be'usha hiskinu, that they instituted in Usha. That was one of the places where the sages, one of the stops where the sages left, were gathered. So they instituted over there that an abbezdin shesorach, if you have a head of a bezdin that sort of did something wrong, did a sin, he was sarach, ein menadin oisei. So then we wouldn't excommunicate him. So we would give him a dispensation. It's sort of a special treatment for Av Beis Din, even though he has done something wrong, he did an avera, but yet we will be, I guess, lenient, and we're not going to be menadeh, we're not going to excommunicate him. Ela oimer loy, but what do we say to him? We use the pasuk in Melachim Beis, Perik Yudalid, hach beit v'shev b'veisecha. Hach beit is the language of heavy, meaning pretend that your head is heavy and stay home. Don't come. We don't want to excommunicate you officially, but we don't want you to come to the Beis Din either. So we're telling him Harbeit v'shei b'veisecha. That's what we tell him. Rashi. Harbeit, zokt Rashi, b'loshen hazeh. This is the language that you say to him. Asay atzmecha ka'odom shekoved olav roshei. Pretend, make yourself like someone whose head is heavy. V'shev b'vei secha, and sit home. So we don't want to excommunicate you, but sit home. And Rashi says, "Beloshin koved oimer." So this is really in an honorable way, you tell him to basically stay home instead of excommunicating him. There's another interpretation. Lishna achrino.
Does that mean
Another,
stay home forever? Like you're off the court, or
until
is it?
they relieve him from the excommunication, like any excommunication. How long until he does teshuvah, until the rabbis see that they want to relieve him? But yeah, I guess a regular excommunication is also till the time that they relieve him or they go to the nasi, as we learned earlier before. Um,
Yeah, I would think that it's the opposite. Someone who's on the base, then you'd have a higher expectation than a layperson who might have done something wrong, might have had an excuse, might have had not known something. But someone who's on the bait, then we should hold them to a higher level. That
okay, well that's a good point, and while that's used in sometimes that people who are more knowledgeable are more responsible, like you say. But I guess there is also the issue. Sometimes people don't know exactly, what they did or they didn't do, and it's can come out a general disgrace. It's better sometimes to keep it more quieter than to. The result is the same. He's going to be out of commission anyways, but it's either doing the general way that we always do it, or give him do it the more discreet way, even though he's still not going to be able to join. But anyway, that's the story. We'll see in a minute the Gemara says exactly uses a little bit of that svara that if he does it again, it's a one-time mistake, but if he does it again, then it's a different story. Let's look inside. But first, Rashi has a different interpretation in the meaning of Harbed v'shei b'veisecha, lishna achrino. That would be another language explaining what means Harbed. So it says Harbed would stand for. Here we're saying Harbed, make your head heavy, pretend that your head is heavy and stay home. Hiskabed kveidecho sheteshe b'veisecha. In other words, protect your honor. Sit home and don't come out instead of forcing basically the Beis Din to take action. Even today's days, there's a special dispensation for sometimes people who are in position of power and they fell from grace. So I guess even today we do that in some time. But nevertheless, chozar v'sorach, if he goes back and repeats and he does this sin again, then is menadin oisei. Then now we will excommunicate him, and the reason is mipnei chilul Hashem, because this will be a desecration as of the name of Hashem, to see that a person can do once and twice. Maybe once people can look away, but he did it once and he did it again. So now people are going to sort of get saying, oh, he can do the sin and he gets away with it. So in that case, he would be excommunicated. That's the opinion of Rav Huna, that he says that this was instituted in Usha. But Upliga de Reish Lakish, this is in disagreement of Reish Lakish. The Amar Reish Lakish says, Talmid Chacham shesorach ein menadin oisei b'farhesia. The other thing is, I need to, from this you see that it's not something that the people will know about his sin. So what you're asking is, he gets away with it, or gets away less. People may not know. We don't want to publicize that he committed this sin, but Reish Lakish says, for example, he says that a Talmid Chacham who erred or did wrong was sarach. He says, Ein menadin noise b'farhesia. His opinion is that we do not excommunicate him publicly altogether, ever. And he has a verse to support his idea, Shenemar, in Hosea Perigdal, the Pasuk Hey, the Pasuk says, V'choshalto hayoim. It says, you stumble today, meaning that when the person stumbles, and B'choshal gam novi imcha, and also the prophet, he stumbled with you together. The misi mecha, the pasuk continues. So what does it mean? The Navi stumbled Laila at nighttime. So he interprets this as kisohu kalayla, cover up for him as the nighttime when it's dark. He says, don't publicize it if he has stumbled. Kisohu zoktrashi, al tevaze oisei b'farhesia, don't degrade him publicly, but rather kilayla, do it as nighttime, shechashecha, which is dark. Ve'ino dumreya, people don't see. Do it that way. So he says, don't publicly excommunicate him. Basically, it looks like maybe they do it in a quiet way. He says, "Emenadin oisei b'farhesia," but it doesn't say that you don't excommunicate him at all. I'm not sure if there is such a thing as excommunicating somebody in a private way, because the entire idea of excommunication is that people should know not to go into with him, not to do business with him, be in his presence. But um, in any event, I mean, apparently we're talking about somebody who was a real Talmud Chacham, fell out of grace. I mean, not talking about somebody who was a pretend. You're talking about the beginning. He was really somebody important, and then he made a mistake, or he failed. And even though he should be even more responsible, but the public aspect of it is kept in a quiet way, as not to embarrass publicly, as he learns from the pasuk. And the Gemara brings another along those lines of Marzutra Chasida, the righteous, the Chosid Marzutra, ki mechayiv tzurba merabonon shamto, when a tzurba merabonon, a student of the rabbis at Hamad Chochem, was guilty of shamto, of excommunication. He did something wrong that required excommunication. So bereisha mishamit nafshe, he would first excommunicate himself. And the Rashi explains why mishamit nafshe mishum yekora dahu tzurba merabonon, because it was of the preciousness of that tzurba merabonon. He didn't want to. He did it reluctantly. So he actually didn't want that tzurba merabonon do it. So he didn't want to excommunicate him. That was something that he didn't really want to do. So what happened is, first he would excommunicate himself, and v'hodor mishamet lididei, and then he would go and excommunicate that tzurba merabonon. And then kabe'ayil be'ushpizei, when he entered his home where he stayed, he would first release himself from this excommunication, and then he would release to the other person as well. I'm not sure he did it for a short period of time, or when it came the time. It seems like when he went up into his place where he stayed, and he couldn't be there if he was excommunicated, so he had to release himself from the excommunication. So he would first release himself, and then he would release it also from the Talmud Chacham. I mean, it needs a little bit more elaboration exactly in what the situation was. Amar Rav Gidl Amar Rav, says Rav Gidl name of Rav, Talmud Chacham menadel la'atzmai umeifir la'atzmai. A Talmud Chacham can excommunicate himself, and he can also release himself from the excommunication, as we see in the previous story, as Mazutra Chasida. He would put himself into excommunication and he would release himself. Amar Papa said, Tisili, in other words, I hold it to my credit. The Loishamti Tzurba Mirabona Me'olam, I have never excommunicated a Tzurba Mirabonon ever. I never excommunicated Tzurba Mirabonon. So what did he do? Eloki Komachayvis Tzurba Mirabona Shamta Heichi of it. So what did you do when a Tzurba Mirabonon was guilty of excommunication? Heichi of it, what did you do? And the Gemara answers, Keho de Marova Mimnu Anigida the Tzurba Mirabonon. In Marova, meaning in Israel, in the west, which was the west of Babylonia, so that was to the west of them. So the expression in Israel was in the west. In the west, the rabbis would count together to give lashes to the one who deserved it, the Tzurba Merabonon. So they would count and they would take a vote. Do the other rabbis thinks that he's guilty of getting the lashes? But they would lemimna ashamta, but they wouldn't count to excommunicate. So they would do the lesser instead of excommunication. They would have the lashes of him. Rashi says, Mimnu anegida malchus. They would give malchus. And Rashi says that malchus yofelam yoser mishamto. It was better to them, the rabbis in Eretz Yisrael, the Marava, they would rather give malchus than excommunicate malchilu, and they would give lashes to them, to those that deserved it. If they deserved excommunication, instead of excommunicating, they would give them lashes. They would give them malchus, and that's what in Mimna Negida the Rabbanon they would count for the lashes, but lo Mimna Ashamta, but not to excommunicate. What is the expression, Frank the Gemara, my Shamta? What is the expression? We call it excommunication, but why? What is the meaning of the word Shamta? Amar Rav says Shom Misa. Shamta comes from the two words, there is death, meaning, I guess, a spiritual death or a result of it. Ushmul says the word Shamta comes from Shmamoyeh, that he should be desolate. Shoimem, like Loshen from Shmamo. And the Gemara says, Umahanya Bey Kitichayo Betanura. This excommunication helps and sits and it sort of penetrates, just as the cover of the oven, when you smear it with oil, you oil the inside of the oven, and it absorbs it. It always stays there in the oven. Basically, that excommunication stays there inside of the person who was excommunicated. Let's say the Rashi, Mahanya kitichaya betanura, kishuman shetoichenes tanur, like the fat that you smear the oven, v'nivla betoichoi she'ena yoytze lo'olam, and it is absorbed inside the walls of the oven. It never leaves. What does it mean to say? What is this, the comparison? Koloimar makil cholman dishamtinan lei, that this is a blemish, it's a wound, it's a smitten, it's a smite that anybody who was excommunicated, it never leaves him if you were once excommunicated. So that's the opinion of Shmuel. He says it's like the oil inside that it's absorbed in the oven. That's how the Shamta is absorbed in the person who was excommunicated. But the Gemara says, Upliga, the Reish Lakish, and this is a disagreement with Reish Lakish. The Omar Reish Lakish said he disagrees. He says that it goes out. Okay. He believes, Reish Lakish says that it does leave the person, unlike Shmuel, because he says, Kishem shenichneses b'mosayim ba'arboim u'shmoyne evorim. Just as the excommunication enters to the 248 limbs of the person, they all get that curse or that chedem, that excommunication. Likewise, when the person, it leaves them, and when he is relieved from it, it also leaves the 248 limbs. And he brings the pasuk for this. When it enters, it says in the pasuk in Yeshua Perik Vav, it says the city shall be Chedem excommunicated. So the word Chedem, over here we're calling it the Shamta, the Chedem. Chedem b'gematria, the numerical value of Chedem is 248. B'gematria Masayim v'arboim u'shmoyne haba. That is the numerical value of 248. And Kashihi Yotza, when it leaves the Ksiv, also in Chabak Gimel Beis, it says, Beroiges Rachem Tisker, while you're angry and the person was excommunicated, but the compassion, remember compassion. The word rachem, compassion, is also begematria hachehava, is also equals 248. So you see, when there is rachem, then there is the release from the cherem, from the excommunication. It's also all the limbs. And basically, he disagrees with Reish Loki, with the opinion of Shmuel, uh, um, uh, that Shmuel said that it's always stays. He says no, it goes in and it goes out. Omer Rabbi Yosef Shadi Shamto, uh, place a excommunication agnufta de kalba, on the tail of a dog. See the Gemara story in a minute. V'ihi dido avda, and that tail itself will do the job and smite him. And smite. You just excommunicate, put a shamta on the tail of the dog, and the tail of the dog will do the job. What happened? The Gemara relates a story. Dahu kalbo, misani de rabbanan. There was a dog that was eating the shoes of the rabbis. Not so sure what kind of shoes they had, or maybe it was shoes. But anyways, they didn't know, they couldn't find the dog that was doing that. So they excommunicated that dog. So a fire caught in his tail, and it consumed him. So you see that the tail did the job already of taking care of the dog who was excommunicated. The tail was excommunicated, and the dog was killed for doing what it did. The Gemara relates, Ahu Alma, there was a powerful person, he was causing pain to one of the students of the Chachamim, and also the Kamed Rabbi Yosef. So he came before Rabbi Yosef, asked him what to do. Amalei, so he says, Zil Shabte, go and excommunicate him. Amalei, he says, Mistafina Menei, I'm afraid of him, afraid to excommunicate him. Rashi says, Mistafina Menei, the Gavra Almahu, he's a very powerful person, so I'm afraid to excommunicate him. Amalei, so he says to him, Shkili Psicha Alei, so write up a psichi, that's a kind of excommunication on a piece of paper. Shkili Psicha Alei, Kosoiv Olav Shamta, write on him. Don't announce it, but write on him. He says, Kolshkin Mistafina Menei. Of course, I'm even more afraid to write it down. Amalei, so he says to him, he advises him, Shakle Liksav Shamta, take that writing, that paper of the excommunication, Achte Bekado, place it in a jug, and we're turning to the next page. The Achte Bekado, that's put in a kada, and he said, so this is the this goes before Achte Bekado means not place it, but announce it in the kad, in the jug, so that nobody will hear it, so you won't have to be afraid. That way they won't be afraid.
But if the person doesn't know they're excommunicated,
okay, we'll see what happens. But yeah, you're right. But I guess on a spiritual level, it still will have an impact. Let's see what happens over here.
No, I blew my nose. Sorry, I meant
Zokt Rashi, and put it bury it in the burial place. And Rashi says, why? There's no, people are not common there. The Koribei Alposhpuri, and blow in it 1,000 blows, 1,000 shofars. Shipuri kol blowing it 1,000. The koribe the krashi kloimer tkabei in that jug. Alfin shipuri 1,000 blows of the shofar. Barboin yoymen for 40 days. Do so. Ozel avidoch. I went in this. So I guess poka kado umes. So that from all this blowing, that jug blew, that burst, and then that person died. The jug was a sign of the person's life. When the jug split and it broke, that was a sign that the other person also uh, died. So then after doing that, the other person died. So the Gemara Almo Mai Shipuri. So you see, what is this Shipuri, this blowing, this shofar, means Shenifroim Mimenu, that they collect from him, they pay him. That means he gets punished. uh, so that's what I guess they call the when they excommunicate somebody, they do the shipuri, and they also do tvarim. They also do shvorim. So the Gemara says, "My tvara." What is the tavri? Lama toikim tkiu shvorim, because he used to blow the sound, the regular tkiya, and then also a shvorim. Omer Rav Yitzchok, Bereid Rav Yehuda. So Rav Yehuda says that what it is Tavri Bote Romi. Tavri Bote Romi, meaning the houses of those who are arrogant, breaks the high houses, as must have seen in these high-rise houses falling like a house of cards after their Tavri Bote Romi. My Tavri Boteromi. Rashi Kloimar Shamto, the excommunication Mishabir Botim Gevoyim, that breaks the how tall houses. So that is the Tekiah and the Shavorim. The Shavorim is breaking. So I guess the Tanya of Rav Shimon Gamliel, because we learned in Rav Shimon Gamliel says, Kol Mokim Shenosnu Chachomim Meinehem, wherever the sages place their eyes on. So as a result, meaning where they punish, is you get oy misa, oy oyni. You get either death, or there is later on poorness. You know, it becomes people lose their money, become poor. So if you if it's a place where the rabbis, punish, I mean, that's what happens as a result. Okay, next, the Mishnah, we learned who are the people that are allowed to take a haircut on Chol HaMoed. So we learned that Hanozir, a person who had his hair growing because he accepted Nezarite, or a Metzoiro couldn't cut his hair because of the being with leprosy. Metumasi, when he goes from Tuma to Tara, is allowed to take a haircut on Chol HaMoed. So the Gemara says that Boyi Menei Rabbi Yirmiyah Rabbi Zera. So Rabbi Yirmiyah asked the question of Zera. When are we talking about? When are we allowing that? Bishaloi hoyu lahem pnai. Are we talking about when they didn't have a chance to? When are we allowing the Nozir and the Metzoira to take a haircut on Chol HaMoed? Is it when they didn't have a chance? Rashi, Bishaloi hoyu lahem pnai. So that means the daf can nokat. So when the Mishnah said they came metuma latara, so that means that they have gone up from being tome on the Yom Tov, and that is why there was no chance before it, and therefore lefikoch megalchin. That's why they can take their haircuts, shalahoyulem pnai legadleach, because they didn't have a chance to take the shave before Yom Tov, because they had not yet come up from their impurity, so they couldn't do it from before Yom Tov. So that's why we're going to allow them on Yom Tov. Dilma, or perhaps we're allowing them af b'shahoyel pnai, even if they had the chance. And Rashi says, Dilma af pi shahoyel pnai, the lagilcho koydem hamoyed, they did not shave before the moyed. Mutorim legalech b'moyech, we're going to say that they're still allowed to shave on the Yom Tov. So Amar Lei, so he says to him, so this was Rabbi Yirmiyah asked Rabbi Zeda. So Rabbi Zeda answers Rabbi Yirmiyah Tinina. We learned this in a Mishnah. The Mishnah says that Kol Elu She'amru Mutorim Legalech B'Moyed, that all of these that we say that they are allowed to take a haircut on Chol HaMoyed is talking about B'Shaloi Hoyel Pnai, is talking about they didn't have a chance. That's when they permitted. Aval Hoyel Pnai. But if they had a chance, Asurim are prohibited. We're not going to allow them to shave on the Chol HaMoyed. However, there is an exception for Noziru Mitzayra. Noziru Mitzayra are special. That Af al Pi Shehoyolahem Pnai Mutorim. Even though they had a chance, they're still permitted. Shlo Korbanei Sehem, we don't want them to delay the Korbanes. We want at least to do it in Chol HaMoyed. Even though they could have done it, but the reason we're going to allow them is because we don't want to delay the Korbanes, so that they can bring the Korbanes during Chol HaMoyed. Rashi explains, Shaloi Yishu Korbanei Sehem. So the Gemara says, shouldn't delay the Korbanes b'tag lachtom, because they have to shave first, ad la'achar haregel. They're going to have to delay it until after the Yom Tov. Rashi says, the Nazir u'mitzoyra ein meviim korbaneseim ad lachar giluach. They don't bring their korbanes until after they shave. So they have to wait, and therefore they're going to have to wait till after Yom Tov. The Ksiv b'hu kroi. And there, because as the pasuk can talk of them. So therefore, hilkoch loy kansinan lahu, but the loy avdi mekame regel. Therefore, we don't punish them when they didn't do it before the Yom Tov. The zimnin the loy avid kame regel, because sometimes they're not going to do it the way they should before the Yom Tov. Umeaskel b'moyed, and they're going to be prohibited to do it on Chol HaMoed. You're going to be usher because you say you could have done it and you didn't do it. And Nimtzo, it'll turn out, Shemashin HaKorbonis, they are going to delay the Korbonis. Ve'enom krevim b'yem hashminim bizmanim, and they won't be brought on the 8th day and the proper time. Lefikach Omru, that's why the Chacham said, Megaleach b'moyed, that they should shave cut their hair during the moyed, because the mutaf lekarev zman ha'akrova because it's better, even though they're taking the haircut on the Chol HaMoyed, but it's better to make the time of the bringing of the kabbalah closer than later, and therefore, even though they could have done it before and they should have done it before, but they didn't do it, we're still going to try to get the karbanis as early as possible. Then we learned Tana, we learned in Abraisa, HaKoyen v'ha'ovel mutorim b'giluach. The Koyen who finishes his service in Mishmar, in the temple, in the Beis HaMikdash, and a mourner who need to shave, they haven't shaved before Yom Tov, mutorim b'giluach, are permitted, the Braisa says, to shave their hair on Chol HaMoed. Preg the Gemara, Hai Ovel Heichidami, what is the case of this Ovel? What are we dealing with in the case of the Ovel? When do we allow for the mourner to shave? Is it when he didn't have a chance before Yom Tov or not? The Gemara explains. If the eighth day of the Ovel comes out to be on Erev Yom Tov, so that means that his Shiva basically and the Shloishim finished on the eighth day. He was no longer, once the eighth day came around, he was no longer an Ovel, and he had a right to shave. So why didn't he shave then? If the eighth day comes after the passing of the relative, the eighth day is an Erev Yom Tov, then he should have shaved on Erev Yom Tov, as the Gemara says, Rashi explains. He should have shaved on before the Yom Tov. Because we learned in the Mishnah later on Daf Yutes Amud Aleph. So over there, the Mishnah says, "Hakoiver meisoy shmoina yomim koid maregel." If one who buries his dead is somebody has to mourn for, but if it's 8 days he buried before Yom Tov, so it says Batlu mimenu Zedus Lamed Yom. So then there is no more 30 days. He doesn't have 30 days. Umutar bigiluach, and then on the 8th day he's allowed to shave. Why? So we explain that he already started one of the 30 days because on the 8th day, the 7th day he finished Shiva, and on the 8th day he started already Shloishim, and now the Yom Tov takes away. So this person who had a chance to shave on the 8th day of burying his mace, the Mishnah says, is no longer Shloishim, but and he didn't shave on the eve of the Yom Tov, should not allow him to shave on the regel. Elo, but you're going to say the case is Sheshchal Shemini Shaloi Liyos B'Shabbos Erev Regel. We're going to say that it turns out on Shabbos. So the 8th day he can't shave on Shabbos because it's Shabbos. It's before Yom Tov. Shabbos Erev Regel. V'Havi Onus, and he is against his will, not at his fault. He couldn't shave before the Yom Tov. That's why he can shave in the Yom Tov. So the Gemara says, Erev Shabbos. No, he still should have shaved Erev Shabbos. Shu Shvi, which is the 7th day. Why? But Rabbi Chaim said, Ravina Bar Shila, halacha ka'abashol. He says the halacha remains like al-bashol. What does Abashol say? Halacha ka'abashol. He says that afilu lo kovar ela shiva yomim koydem haregel. You don't have to have 8 days. He says even if 7 days before the Yom Tov that you buried, batla mimenu gzeira shloshim. There's no shloshim, so he can still bury. He can still shave on the 7th day, as he says like this. Moedim chachamim la'abashol. Chachamim also agree to abashol, even though normally they need an 8th day. Moedim chachamim la'abashol. Afagav debo shmoina. Even though usually they need 8 days. B'shachal shmini shel Eliyas b'Shabbos erev haregel. If the 8th day is Shabbos before Yom Tov, and he can't shave on Shabbos, so then shemuta lekaleach be'erev Shabbos, shemuta legayos doshu shviz, which is a shvi. Okay, and the Gemara says lo tzricha. So this case is needed that when he didn't have a chance, Shechal Shvi Shaleliyas b'Shabbos Erev that the seventh day came out on Shabbos before the Yom Tov, and he cannot shave on Shabbos. So that's why he shaves on Chol Hamoed. The Gemara says that Tana B'ro. Okay, you know what? Let's leave it over here. Uh, we'll leave it over here today. We've got a lot of things going on. And Emetz Hashem, we'll resume. Everybody have a good Yom Tov. And we should only have a joy of Simchas Torah to continue throughout the year, especially in Eretz Yisrael. Should hear only good news and should be peace in Eretz Yisrael. And should usher in a whole new era of the coming of Mashiach. Thank you for joining me. See you, everybody, next week.
Chag Sameach.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good Yontif.
Yom Tov.